Hey friends, welcome to my channel. Let's get real. The reason why you're here is because you're probably stuck. It could be that project, that business, that next level move that you've been dreaming about, but not actually getting around to doing. Well, this video isn't about adding something more to your inspiration board. It's about the science behind the why you're not taking action and the exact framework for you to break through. By the end of this video, you'll understand 3 key things. 1, why your brain fights you when you try to start something important. 2, the 4-phase framework that turns desire into action. And 3, practical steps that work even when your motivation is nowhere to be found. And if you find this interesting and you want to stay to the end, I'm going to give you one small challenge that could change everything. Not next week, not tomorrow, but today. This is the neuroscience of action and how to leverage it when your mind is fighting against you. So let's dive in. We've all been there, staring at that business plan or that creative project we desperately want to start, but yet still can't start. I have sat at my desk for months staring at my business plan, thinking, what is stopping me? The question is, what's stopping you? Taking action isn't just what drives our dreams. It's what separates the dreamers from the doers. The desire action gap isn't just theoretical. It's that knot in your stomach when another day passes without any progress. Our brains pit what we want against what we fear. And when fear weighs heavier, we freeze, we Netflix. The raw truth about desire is that it's the starting line and not the finishing line. And yes, as much as I love talking about dreams and goals, if you're not actioning them because of fear, then all they are unmade promises to yourself. And let's be honest, fear comes in many formats and it generally paralyzes most of us. And it's not the vague, abstract fear, it's the stomach churning fear that comes with creative work and the uncertainty of income. And being a freelancer myself, I know curse isn't just income anxiety. It's that 3 a.m. wake up wondering if clients are going to renew or if next month you're eating super noodles or steak. I've lived this. Every freelancer, small business owner, startup has lived this as well. It's like the economy sneezes and the whole creative industry catches pneumonia. 1 minute I'm buying a house, the next minute I'm selling my own. Listen, when work dries up, which it sometimes does, I watch brilliant creatives follow 3 paths. Some spiral, disappearing into a Netflix hole and daytime TV, hoping someone is going to rescue them. Some quit completely, convinced that the universe is telling them to get a real job. And some who ultimately thrive pivot hard, treating scarcity as a clarifying focus. Same circumstances, radically different outcomes. As you know, I love the science, so let's get to it because the science here is absolutely fascinating. Researchers studying fear responses found that self-efficacy, which is the belief in your capacity to execute behaviors necessary for specific performances, actually change your brain's responses to threat. High self-efficacy activates the prefrontal cortex, which is the part that helps with problem solving, while low self-efficacy keeps you trapped in your amygdala-driven fear responses. So it's not just about positive thinking, it's neurologically measured. But you see, fear is actually just one piece of the puzzle. And it's the kind of lie we tell ourselves when our motivation has vanished. Fear, you see, is just one piece of the puzzle. When fear stops, we often label it as a motivational problem. That's a convenient lie that we like to tell ourselves. It's a bit like when I say, God, if only I had more motivation, I would take action. But actually, it's time that we just kind of dismantle that excuse and actually figure out what's happening when our motivation vanishes. I'm just not motivated enough is the most common untruth that we tell ourselves, because motivation isn't a personality trait that you either have or you don't have. And it's definitely not a feeling that magically arrives before action. It's actually a neurochemical response to action. That's why being consistent and taking action is always the most important steps. So let me just say that one more time. Motivation is the reward for taking action, not the requirement. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you, right? Sometimes I do binge Netflix until my eyes are blurry and the algorithm asks if I'm still watching. I don't fight it. I actually lean into it until that dopamine well of mine is completely dried up and I am so bored that it becomes more painful than action. And you know what? That's not failure. That's recognizing that you need to bottom out on avoidance before your brain decides that it will take the harder but more rewarding path. I always like to lean into this theory here, and it's called self-determination theory, which identifies 3 critical components for sustainable motivation. Firstly, autonomy, feeling in control; competence, feeling capable; and connection, feeling like what you're doing matters, your work matters, your projects matter, your hobbies matter, just your to-do list matters. And when motivation vanishes, at least one of these is compromised. And the science shows that actually addressing one of these deficits is more important than generic motivational tips. For example, if you're missing autonomy, then create choice for yourself. If you're missing competence, then break down those tasks into smaller bite-sized chunks so you can overcome the overwhelm and feeling like you're not getting anything done. And if you're missing the connection, then revisit the why. Why are you doing the thing that you're doing? What do you love about it? Does it bring you joy? Or is it financial, relationship, environmental? Is it because you want to change your circumstances? All your whys matter. Understanding that motivation follows action rather than preceding it changes everything. And believe you me, I have times when I don't feel motivated, but I know that to get motivated, I have to take that action. So then what does this actually mean for how you approach your day, how you approach your projects, your clients, your work, your to-do list? Let me break down the practical implications that transform insight and interesting theory into life-changing practice. So here's my framework for overcoming inaction. Phase 1, brutal clarity. Not vague aspirations, but surgical honesty about your current situation and your desired state. What exactly shifts if you succeed? So not just external outcomes like more money. What internal shifts do you want to make? Do you finally want to feel legitimate, secure, creative? Without this clarity, your motivation will collapse at the first obstacle. Phase 2. Most people waste energy fighting the circumstances that they can't change while neglecting the levers that they can actually control. For example, I want to support more creatives, more freelancers, more small business owners, while still maintaining my photography work. Now, I can't control the market, but I can control my knowledge base. That's why I've invested in things like psychology training, coaching training, and it's not to quit photography, it's to add another dimension to my work with creators and freelancers and small business owners. And phase 3 is strategic chunking. Not only just planning, having goals, but it's also understanding how to break those goals down. Break down your 12-month vision into 3-month actionable blocks. This is science-based. Your brain works better when things are broken down into small chunks. Then create systems that make actions as frictionless as possible, because the last thing you need is to be thinking more about what you're doing and where things are going. Small, consistent steps beat grand, sporadic gestures every time. And I have learned this the hard way. Phase 4 is regular recalibration, which means every quarter assess where you're at, what you're doing, what you're missing, where things are going wrong, and adjust your course. Because markets change, goals adjust. This isn't failing. This is recognizing that you need to adjust and change. This isn't inconsistency. This is called strategic adaptation to help you and support you moving forward. This 4-phase framework mirrors what psychologists call trans-theoretical model of behavioral change. That's a mouthful. Research shows lasting changes follow predictable stages. Contemplation, your phase 1. Preparation, phase 2. Action, your phase 3. And maintenance, your phase 4. And studies show that people who skip these stages have a higher relapse rate, because as much as you want to, you just can't hack the process. And the difference is that most people approach these stages unconsciously, whereas if you approach them intentionally, you have more chance of following through. Now, the 4 phases give you a strategic roadmap, but the truth is, strategy without tactical execution is just wishful thinking. You really do need an in-the-moment tool for when resistance hits. And believe me, resistance will hit. And that's where my action activation framework comes into play. It's the practical, no-excuse approach for when everything in you wants to procrastinate. When I'm stuck, I weaponize the uncomfortable questions against my own excuses. For example, like, how does another day of inaction get me closer to my goal? Because this completely cuts through the BS, because you know what? There's never a good answer. Like, I really want to watch that show. Then I ask, what's the real block here? Is it energy, fear, skill, confusion? Because actually naming that specific block shrinks it from a wall to a hurdle. Waiting for motivation. It's a bit like waiting to get wet before jumping in the pool. Because action precedes motivation. It's not the other way around. Because the truth is, your brain chemistry literally changes after completing even the tiniest of tasks. Each small win releases dopamine, which creates a feedback loop that craves more completion. But seriously, you just have to start that cycle. The truth is, in reality, vague goals fail and specific if-then plans succeed. Because studies have indicated that participants who create if-then plans, like for example, if it's 7 p.m., then I will go for a run for 20 minutes, were 90% more likely to follow through with their intentions than those who just said, oh, I'll go for a run sometime this week. The reason being is because these plans bypass your willpower entirely, creating automatic behavioral triggers, because they literally reduce the cognitive load of decision making when temptation or fatigue hits, which it does. But it all sounds good in theory, right? And I know what you're saying because I've said it before. Well, this isn't real life. So let's put it into practice, because theory doesn't really create change, but consistent implementation does. So let's get brutally practical about how this actually works in daily life. And I'm not talking about some idle situation. Let's talk about that messy, distracted, real world existence, because I know I'm a hot mess. So here's how to make these things actionable when life gets chaotic. Because it does, right? Here are 3 non-negotiable practices that helped me build my business when motivation was nowhere to be found. The 5-minute rule. Commit to just 5 minutes daily on your most important tasks, because the friction of starting is always worse than the doing. The decision elimination creates protocols that remove choice paralysis. For example, after coffee, I will immediately work on my client proposal for 30 minutes. No decisions needed. And the last thing that I like to do is every Sunday, recalibrate. Every Sunday, I conduct a merciless review. What moved forward, what stalled, and where did you lie to yourself? And it's not about punishment. It's about course correction before it becomes too late. These strategies aren't just practical, they are neurologically sound. The 5-minute rule works because it bypasses the brain's tendency to overestimate task difficulty. Decision elimination reserves cognitive resources, which is a finite daily supply according to ego depletion research. And the Sunday weekly review strengthens your neural pathways through reflection. Studies show that we learn significantly more from experiences we consciously process versus those we merely have. The science of habit formation validates this approach. Research suggests that habits take anywhere from 18 to 254 days to form, within 66 days being average. That's a long time. The variables wasn't willpower or motivation, it's consistent action. And habits form faster when triggered by consistent cues in consistent environments. This explains why the if-then protocol works so powerfully. It leverages content consistency to bypass motivation fluctuations. These coaching principles aren't just abstract concepts. They directly address the fundamental gap that plagues every creative, every freelancer, every entrepreneur, every human with ambition. And I'm talking about the desire to action gap. I am certainly not immune to it. For example, this is how it plays out for someone who actually teaches this stuff. Every day I face the same gap between who I want to be and what I'm actually doing. Some mornings I wake up crystal clear about my goals, but then find myself 3 hours deep in pointless busy work by noon. There are people out there that you admire, that I admire, and they're not smarter. It's just that they're better at closing the gap consistently. It's like they build bridges, whereas I dig moats. Let's get brutally honest here. Sometimes I actively go out of my way to avoid difficult work because it feels temporarily good to avoid and rebel against my own ambition. It's a bit like giving the middle finger to pressure. And I'm not physically exhausted. I'm existentially resistant to the never-ending treadmill that I've built for myself. The irony is, this rebellion actually keeps me running in place longer than if I'd just done the work in the first place. And cognitive psychology identifies specific distortions that really do widen this gap. Catastrophizing makes us overestimate the painfulness of important tasks. All or nothing thinking makes us believe that less than perfect execution is worthless. And most insidious is temporal discounting, our brain's tendency to choose immediate comfort over future rewards. That's probably one of my favorite. Even when future rewards could be exponentially greater. These aren't character flaws, these are evolutionary holdovers when immediate threats meant more than long-term planning. The real difference is awareness. Naming these distortions disarms them. The gap between wanting and doing doesn't appear out of nowhere. It's manufactured by something more insidious than procrastination. The real culprit is those limited beliefs quietly running in the background, shaping your perceptions without your awareness. These beliefs can become your invisible architects of your inaction. Limited beliefs aren't just thoughts, they're invisible prison walls. What makes them dangerous is that they operate below conscious awareness, filtering your perception of reality to make you confirm what you think you already believe. It's basically what we call confirmation bias on steroids. You don't see opportunities that contradict with your limitations. You don't register evidence of your capabilities, and you twist neutral feedback into confirmation of inadequacy. Recently, I reviewed my work from past years with fresh eyes, and I was pretty stunned. The work was solid, it was creative, it was impactful. But in the moment of that creation, my belief that my work wasn't powerful enough, impactful enough, or had any value really distorted my perception. I didn't really see a reality, I saw a reflection of my inner narrative. And it's not about self-doubt, it's about perceptual blindness. Limited beliefs can fall into three toxic categories. Hopelessness, the situation can't improve. Helplessness, I can't influence the situation. Worthlessness, I don't deserve the improvement. These aren't casual thoughts, these are identity level convictions that hijack your entire decision-making process. The question isn't really whether you have these beliefs, because we all do at some point. The question is whether you can catch them in action before they derail you. Neuroscience reveals that limited beliefs aren't just psychological, they're physically encoded in neural pathways. So every time you think I can't, you strengthen a neural connection. That is bonkers, right? The good news is that neuroplasticity means that your pathways can be rewired. Research shows that when you catch a limited belief and you flip it, basically reframe it, you're literally building new neural pathways. It's not just about positive BS, it's actually rewiring your brain on a physical level. And over time, your brain begins to favor the alternative explanation. These limited beliefs aren't just theoretical obstacles, they're the actual things that I speak about with my clients and help them dismantle. Well, here's the approach that I use for myself and for my clients to help them cut through excuses and create actual movement. When clients tell me they know what they want to do but just can't make themselves do it, I know we're not dealing with a willpower problem or a knowledge problem. We're dealing with an emotional blockage masquerading as procrastination. So my approach is always to ask those important questions. What specifically is happening in your body when you try to start? Where do you feel the resistance physically? What stories stop playing in your mind? Ask yourself the same questions, and then I always dig a little deeper. What's the worst that can happen if you fail at this? And what is the worst that will happen if you succeed? You'd be surprised how many fear the actual idea of the success. Because that last question often reveals the real blocker. Fear of change, visibility, or the responsibility that comes with success. And these approaches are drawn from cognitive behavioral therapy exposure principle. The research shows that articulating your fears reduces the emotional state by 50%. It's crazy to think that the amygdala, our fear center, it basically calms when you name that fear. Additionally, breaking things into those smaller steps, well, that leverages what psychologists call the self-efficacy spiral. And basically what happens is each small step increases our belief in our capacity to achieve the things we want to achieve, making our goals, ambitions, and dreams a lot more attainable and approachable. And I know that it all sounds good in theory, so let's get practical about it. If we were in a coaching session right now, I would push for specificity. I would ask you to name the obstacle, not the surface excuse, but the real obstacle that you feel is getting in your way. I'd ask you, what genuine actions are you willing to take in the next 72 hours? What is within your resources, your environment, your capabilities that you can actually do in the next 72 hours? And also, what's at stake if you don't follow through? Is your back up against the wall? What issues will arise if you don't follow through with your actions? Basically, what's the cost of another week of inaction? Because accountability without consequences isn't accountability, it's just wishful thinking. Now, I've given you the blueprint, the science, and the practical steps, but information without application is just entertainment. And as much as I love to entertain, I'm really here to try and challenge you. So the question is, where do you want to go from here? What are your next steps to make sure it's not just another video that you watch and then forget? Because the brutal truth that changes everything is that your brain doesn't want what's best for you. It wants what's the safest for you. Evolution optimizes for survival, not fulfillment. That means your brain actively resists the very changes that could bring you joy, purpose, and success. But as you know, this is why I've done this video, because this is what gets interesting. You actually have the knowledge and the power to hack that. And it's not with willpower and it's not with motivational tricks, but it's understanding exactly how your neurochemistry works against you. And then using that knowledge to create an environment where action becomes inevitable. From my perspective and from what I've learned, the difference between those that take consistent action and those that don't isn't willpower, talent, or luck. It's understanding that core truth that design beats discipline every single time. Look, if you're serious about closing the desire action gap, then feel free to join us in the Creative Psychology Lab. Not just another monthly course, it's a monthly accountability container where your excuses die and your actions multiply. And the reason why a accountability community is important, because commitment to another person or group increases your follow-up by 65%. And specific one-to-one accountability increases it by 95%. And this is why monthly accountability sessions work, because it's not just motivation, it's structured accountability with consequences, but nice ones, because group coaching isn't just anecdotal, it's scientifically validated. And also, I love having a community and would love to speak to other creatives and share all our knowledge together. Behavioral change shows that social accountability activates different neural pathways than solo commitments. So let's make our commitments public so we can engage the brain's social reward center and activate those dopamines and get those actions taken. Look, I know how it feels to be stuck in that gap between what you want and what you're doing. I have been there. Hell, I visit occasionally. But I also know on the other side of that gap is everything that you wanted. The only question you got to ask yourself after this video is, will you keep staring at the gap, or are you going to start building that bridge? That bridge isn't built with intentions. It's built with tiny, consistent actions that accumulate into something powerful. Because this is your life we're talking about. So do that action, not someday, not today, but right now. That's it from me. I'm Jerry, and I'll see you in the next one. And hopefully with one small win under your belt, because that's how it starts.